Do you remember the last time you lost your keys and you just started looking for your car keys? You wanted to go out, and it's like 5 minutes to the time you set to leave the house, and now you're looking for your keys. There's immediately this rush to go to places where your brain just tells you it would probably be. So you go through all the places you likely would have put it in first, and then eventually, let's just assume you find it and you're happy. Now, what you just used to go through the entire process is called a mental model. So a mental model is a mental framework that shapes the way we interpret, judge, or prepare for any mental stimuli. So anytime your brain is stimulated, anytime you have some input from outside, it's a mental model that you use to interpret that input. And your mental models are shaped by your worldview. So your worldview is very, very important. Now, I want to teach mostly in this episode leaders. I want to try and show you the best and most efficient way to translate an organization's goals and visions into actionable steps that every single employee is happy to take. Now, with a mental model, you can amplify, you can dampen, you can reshape, and you can just do so much to goals, concepts, and ideas. For leaders, you want to think about your mental models in how you're interpreting it with respect to your KPIs. So let's just start with an example company. Let's assume this particular company is a software as a service company. So they make software that enables maybe marketers to send bulk emails to people. So something like MailChimp, for instance, that maybe most people would have heard of. Let's just assume that's your company and you want it to be the best in the world. You want it to be known for its greatness, its ethics. You want it to be known for so many things. Now, let's assume the overarching company culture and one very core part of your company values is that every customer's complaints must be properly treated. Now, maybe the reason why you came up with that is because you want your customers to feel like you sincerely care about them. So that's why you came up with that as a company value or company culture. And that's it. Now, for this particular quarter, you now had a goal to get 100,000 new customers. So people that sign up and maybe do the free trial of your software. Let's just assume that's what you wanted to achieve. Now, you need a mental model to be able to translate both the vision and the quarter goals into steps that every single member of the team can take. So the designer, the software developer, both back end, front end, the data person, the marketing person, the sales person, every single person on the team, whether you're the motion graphics person, whatever it is you're doing, you should be able to interpret both that company culture, that core value I mentioned, and the current quarter's goals into your workflow. But there's usually a gap between what the CEO wants and then what the employees do in cases like this. And it's because of faulty mental models. So what you want to do is construct a mental model and not just allow everybody to vibe and just flow the way they feel like is best. And to construct a mental model is pretty simple. You take into account two things. One, what do you want to achieve? And why do you want to achieve it? So I want to achieve the goals I've mentioned. Why I want to achieve it is because I believe that's going to move the company forward. Now, when you have that in mind, the second thing you need is I don't want to say deep, but a meaningful understanding of everybody's roles. So that's where you now need the managers, because it's the managers that will now give you feedback and tell you about the roles of the members on their teams and tell you, okay, this team, this is this person's role, this is how the role plays out on a daily basis, this is this person's role. So what you're going to do is now give them something that will now initiate a mindset shift it should be like a framework document. In that framework document, it would list the person's role to say, in your role, this is what this particular thing looks like. So you now translate that view that you have of every customer should feel very appreciated. You translate that into what the videographer should be able to do on a daily basis. So the videographer now understands that maybe in every video there should be a particular animation that shows something, maybe people holding hands, or a vague silhouette at the background that shows someone wearing suits, shaking the hands of somebody or some other person, like whatever way you just think you can depict it. But the idea is that there will be some form of representation of that "we care about you" type thing. Then of course, obviously, for the customer service team, it's just way much clearer, what they should do. Every customer's complaint, you follow it to the last, ensure that a complaint doesn't just end at you've helped me with this job, but it ends at, I think this is a company that I can recommend to people. So when that person has that as their overarching goal, they'll be fulfilling that your core value. That customer service person is going to be fulfilling your core value. You go to the developers. The developers may not really have much context because they like to bury their heads in code, and so maybe you would need the product manager at this point to help translating that. But it's still going to be the same thing, that you'll ensure that you can catch bugs, because there will always be bugs. So you ensure you can catch bugs in real time and do something about it. And then once you've done that, you communicate to so and so team that is in charge of informing the customers. So that way, even the person who is working on the back end is able to ensure a beautiful experience for the customers. Someone who does not have any form of interaction with them in any way is able to ensure a beautiful process for the customers. That's just really what you would want to be doing. So each team would need to be informed of the goal and why it's being done. They need to adopt it as a mindset, not as a set of instructions. That's usually where leaders tend to fail. They translate these things to instructions. When you're giving people instructions that don't carry the weight of the value you want to communicate, you just spoil the process. You want them to first imbibe it as a mindset. Inside of that mindset, you now notice their workflow, then you review it. When you're reviewing, that's when you now work together with them to have a set of instructions, which you now call a protocol. It's that protocol that they will now use every single time without even thinking to carry out their jobs. The problem is you're trying to enforce a protocol from the start because we won't start seeing the results immediately. That's not how reality is. In reality, there needs to be some level of feedback. There needs to be some trial run. There needs to be a demo period. Then you need to at least run something for some time to get some feedback, which is why you don't see someone learning how to fly a plane today and then tomorrow is flying a commercial air flight. They have so many simulations they run because that's just the nature of reality. You can't decide to achieve a goal and think that immediately you'll start seeing results. That's not how it works. So that desire to start seeing results immediately is what usually shortchanges you, is what causes you to not use the right mental models. You still use mental models anyway, it's just that they are flawed mental models. So if you want to always use the right mental models, you follow the process I've said. So you carry the value, ask yourself, why do I want to achieve this? And then, what's the goal I want to achieve? When you have these two things together, then translate them into mindset. So this is how you should think about your job. That's what you're communicating to everybody. Then you give them a trial period to run with it. In that trial period, then when they're done, you ask them how did they do it. Using their how, then you design a formal protocol for doing it. It's that formal protocol that now becomes established as the way in which you do things in this company or this organization. That's exactly how you then begin to prosper on all sides. So the problem never really is with, well, let me not talk for all of you, because sometimes some people just have really, really poor goals, unrealistic expectations. So let me not say the problem never really is with the goals. Sometimes the problem is with the goals, but most of the time the problem is in how we translate these things to actionable steps. You should be able to marry what you desire with the steps that each of your employees will take on a daily basis. That's why you need to get good managers, because it's the managers that, if a manager does not really know exactly what everybody on their team does, how they do it, there'll be a big problem. Because imagine you run a very big organization with maybe 50,000 employees. There is no way because you'd have, with 50,000 employees, you'd have a lot of distinctive job roles. So there's no way you know everybody's job role and exactly how they carry out their job on a day-to-day. It's their managers that they interact with that are meant to understand. So, which is why one of the biggest attributes you should look for in a manager is empathy. The person's ability to just see things from other people's perspective. That's like the most powerful skill a manager should have. Because when a manager lacks that, you can't communicate the instructions from above to them. You can't communicate their pain points to upper management. It's like it just causes a big problem. So your managers will be the most important aspect. Whether it's a small organization or a big organization, you need very good managers that are able to communicate your goal in the form of a mental model to these people. So when they adopt these things as a mindset, remember, they have to adopt it as a mindset first, not as a set of instructions. We're too quick to give instructions and issue orders and tell people do this, do that. Ask them to think about things in a particular way. That's the first thing you want to do. So you want to push them to seeing things in a particular way. Because when they start seeing things in a particular way, their worldview is altered. When they believe that if a customer is happy like this is how it's going to trickle down to me and make me also happy. Maybe with increased salary or increases, whatever the case is, however you want to tie the story together, ensure that they can see the exact impacts. And if you cannot do that, it means you just have a very poor goal. You just set a very wrong goal. If you cannot communicate how that everyone in the organization is going to benefit from doing their jobs properly, then there's a problem somewhere. And I don't have the time to go into that, but there's a problem somewhere. You need to be able to communicate. This is what we should do for this organization, and this is how it's going to affect and impact you. In as much as we are here for the clients and our target audience, this is also how you'll benefit from it. Because you have to understand that your employees are not people who just work to get paid. The work they do is part of their lives, it's part of their dreams, their goals, their aspirations. Like what they are doing at your organization is part of things they've always dreamt of doing. So for them, they're also meeting a certain level of satisfaction. So you should be able to ensure you marry your vision with their own vision. That's when you do that, when you take care of your employees, ensuring that you guys are the same mental wavelength, it really becomes easy for your employees to do great work for you. So if you just put things together like this, it's easier for you to lead. So when you're setting KPIs, it's easy for you to set the right KPIs. It's easy for you to bring them on board. Everything flows easier. I'm not saying there will not be friction at some point, but once a person adopts a mental model, it becomes automated. They do things like that naturally. They feel like that's their nature. That's what happens. So imagine if it's someone's nature to actually do the work in a way that sets your company apart, and not just one somebody, every single somebody in your organization. Imagine. But we don't usually have the patience to get to this point, and it doesn't take that much time. It does take some time because you'd have to run a package like this for a couple of months before everybody comes on board. But once everybody has come on board, you've secured that organization for a generation at the very least. Because you would find out that less and less people are leaving because they now see the way you've taught them to see their work as the only way to do the work. So they can't imagine leaving because they're like, if I go somewhere else, will they understand my work in this way? They start feeling like other people would have a very poor understanding of the way they are doing the work because they're not just comfortable, they are doing the work excellently and they are ensuring your company is excelling as well. So things like this will always ensure general success of both the employee and the employer. So I'll just encourage you to adopt mental models, and I talk about a lot of mental models and how to customize them for company in most of the masterclasses I run. It's something that is super beneficial for both the emerging leader and the established leader. So thank you so much for your time, and I sincerely really enjoyed these episodes because it's something I'm very, very passionate about. Until the next episode.